My name is Margaret Chen, and at 73 years old, I'd lived in the same house on Maple Street for 47 years. I raised my children there, buried my husband from there, and planned to die there. But 6 months ago, everything changed when the Hendersons moved in next door. They seemed perfect at first. James and Victoria Henderson, both in their early 40s, with their twin teenagers Mason and Olivia. James worked in finance, Victoria was a real estate agent. They brought me casseroles and offered to mow my lawn. I thought I'd finally gotten good neighbors after old Mr. Peterson passed away. But then the whispers started. It began subtly. I'd be at the grocery store, and conversations would stop when I approached. Mrs. Patterson from the book club started speaking to me louder, slower, as if I were a child. At the bank, the teller asked if I needed help counting my money. I brushed it off at first. Maybe I was being paranoid. Then came the incident at the pharmacy. Mrs. Chen, the pharmacist said, sympathy dripping from her voice. Are you sure you picked up your medication yesterday? Our records show you were here, but... She trailed off, exchanging glances with her assistant. Of course I'm sure, I snapped. I haven't been here in 2 weeks. Right, she said in that tone. That patronizing, pitying tone that made my blood boil. I drove home furious, but the anger turned to ice-cold fear when I pulled into my driveway. Victoria Henderson was standing on my front porch, talking to my daughter Sarah through the screen door. My daughter, who lived 3 hours away and never visited without calling first. Mom! Sarah rushed down the steps, her face creased with worry. Why didn't you tell me you've been having problems? What problems? Sarah, what's going on? Victoria touched Sarah's arm gently, her face a mask of concern. I'll give you two some privacy. Margaret, remember, we're right next door if you need anything. As Victoria walked away, I noticed she glanced back with something in her eyes. Not concern. Something else. Something that made my skin crawl. Sarah took me inside and sat me down at my own kitchen table like I was the child and she was the parent. Mrs. Henderson called me. She said you've been leaving your stove on, wandering outside in your nightgown at 3 a.m., forgetting conversations you've had with her. Mom, she said last week you accused her of stealing your mail. That's not, Sarah, none of that is true. Mom. Sarah's eyes were wet with tears. She's been documenting everything. She showed me photos, timestamp messages. She's worried about you and honestly so am I. My heart hammered against my ribs. Photos. Messages. Sarah, I need you to believe me. None of that happened. I don't know what she's trying to do, but maybe we should get you evaluated. Just to be safe. There's no shame in it, Mom. If you're having memory issues. I'm not having memory issues. My voice came out sharper than I intended, and I saw Sarah flinch. I took a breath, forced myself to calm down. Honey, please. Something's wrong, but it's not with me. Sarah stayed for dinner, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She kept asking me questions, testing me. What did you have for breakfast? Do you remember our conversation last Tuesday? When's your next doctor's appointment? Each question felt like a tiny betrayal, a nail in the coffin of my credibility. After she left, I sat in the dark living room, staring at the wall I shared with the Hendersons. Through the thin barrier, I could hear muffled voices, then laughter. Were they laughing at me? That night I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m. I heard something outside. A car door closing softly, trying not to wake the neighborhood. I crept to my bedroom window and peeked through the curtains. James Henderson was in my driveway. He was looking around furtively. Then he walked up to my garage door and did something I couldn't quite see. My hand reached for my phone to call the police, but I hesitated. What if they didn't believe me? What if this was exactly what the Hendersons wanted? For me to seem paranoid, delusional. I grabbed my late husband's camera instead, the one with the good zoom lens he'd used for birdwatching. Through the lens, I watched James pull something from his pocket. He placed it on the ground near my garage door, then quickly walked back to his house. I waited 20 minutes after his lights went out, then threw on my robe and slippers and crept outside. There on the concrete was a small pile of cigarette butts. But I didn't smoke. I'd never smoked a day in my life. Realization hit me like a freight train. They were staging evidence, making it look like I was doing things I wasn't doing. But why? I left the cigarette butts there and went back inside, my mind racing. I needed proof. Real proof. And I needed to be smart about this because clearly, the Hendersons were playing a very calculated game. The next morning I drove to Best Buy and spent $400 I couldn't really afford on a security camera system. The young man who helped me set it up looked at me strangely when I insisted the cameras be hidden, not obvious. Most people want them visible, he said. As a deterrent. I'm not trying to deter anyone, I replied. I'm trying to catch them. Over the next 3 days I acted normal. I smiled at Victoria when she waved from her garden. I accepted a plate of cookies from Olivia and Mason. I pretended I didn't notice James watching my house from his bedroom window. And all the while my cameras recorded everything. On the fourth night at 1:43 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I pulled up the camera feed and felt my blood run cold. Victoria Henderson was in my backyard. She was wearing dark clothes and moved with purpose, not stealth. She knew I was supposedly senile, so why bother being careful? She walked right up to my back door and tried the handle. Lock, thank God. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but 2 minutes later, James appeared. He was carrying something, a gas can. My hands shook as I fumbled with my phone, trying to decide what to do. Call 911. But what were they actually doing wrong? Trespassing. Would that be enough? Then James did something that made my decision for me. He started pouring gasoline along the base of my back fence, near where my property line met theirs. I dialed 911, my voice surprisingly steady as I reported intruders on my property with a gas can. The dispatcher kept me on the line, and I watched through my window as red and blue lights appeared 7 minutes later. 7 minutes during which the Hendersons had calmly walked back to their house, leaving the evidence behind. The police knocked on both our doors. I answered in my robe, phone in hand with the video footage ready. The Hendersons answered in their pajamas, looking confused and concerned. Officers, is everything all right? James asked, the picture of a worried neighbor. Is Mrs. Chen okay? Sir, we received a report of trespassing and possible arson attempt. Ma'am, the officer turned to me. Can you tell us what you saw? I showed them the video footage. Both officers watched in silence as Victoria tried my door, as James poured gasoline. I showed them the timestamp, the clear footage of their faces. I also have this, I said, pulling out my phone to show them photos I'd taken of the cigarette butts. They've been staging evidence to make me look senile. I think they want me declared incompetent. That's ridiculous, Victoria said, but her voice was too high, too tight. Officers, Mrs. Chen has been having some issues. I've been documenting them out of concern. I have everything on my phone. Ma'am, we'll need you both to come down to the station, the officer said. His tone suddenly cold. We take attempted arson very seriously. This is a misunderstanding, James insisted. We were checking on our fence. We thought we smelled gas and were investigating. At 2 in the morning. With a gas can. The officer wasn't buying it. As they led the Hendersons away in handcuffs, Victoria turned back to me. The mask had finally slipped. Her face was twisted with pure hatred. You're supposed to be too senile to figure it out, she hissed. Do you know how much your property is worth? Do you know what I could have done with that land? And there it was. The truth I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. The next few days were a whirlwind. The police investigation uncovered everything. Victoria had done her research on me. Knew I was widowed, knew my children lived far away, knew I was at an age where cognitive decline was plausible. She'd spent months building a false narrative, spreading rumors in the community, planting evidence, all to lay the groundwork for having me declared incompetent. The plan was simple but cruel. Once I was deemed unfit to care for myself, they'd push for me to be moved to assisted living. Sarah, overwhelmed and far away, would likely agree. Then Victoria, as my concerned neighbor and a real estate agent, would offer to help sell my house. At a significant discount, of course, to move it quickly. She'd buy it herself through a shell company, flip it, and make a fortune. My property was worth nearly $1 million in the current market. They'd been patient, methodical. The pharmacy visits I supposedly made. Victoria had gone in wearing a wig and sunglasses, claiming to be me. The wandering at night. James had set up a camera with pre-recorded footage of someone in a nightgown, then shown it to neighbors as evidence of my declining state. The stove left on. They'd planned to sneak in and actually do it, maybe start a small fire that would force me out. But they'd gotten impatient. Or maybe greedy. The gasoline was meant to start a fire that would damage my fence and part of my house. Minor enough to not kill me. Major enough to prove I was a danger to myself and others. The case went to trial 3 months later. I sat in that courtroom and watched as the prosecutors laid out every piece of evidence. The video footage. The testimony from neighbors who, once they knew the truth, remembered Victoria asking pointed questions about me. The digital forensics that showed James had photoshopped images to make it look like I'd left my stove on. The financial records showing Victoria had already secured financing to buy my property. Mason and Olivia testified too, and my heart broke for them. They'd had no idea what their parents were doing. Olivia cried on the stand as she talked about how her mother had told her to spread rumors at school about the confused old lady next door. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. James Henderson was sentenced to 8 years for attempted arson, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. Victoria got 10 years for the same charges plus identity theft. Their real estate licenses were revoked. Their house went into foreclosure. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, but mostly I felt tired. And sad. Sad that people could be so cruel, so calculating. Sad that for months I doubted myself, wondered if maybe I was losing my mind. Sarah apologized 1,000 times, but I told her it wasn't her fault. The Hendersons had been convincing. They'd played on every fear adult children have about their aging parents. My other neighbors apologized too, brought me casseroles and flowers. Mrs. Patterson from book club cried and said she should have known better than to doubt me. The pharmacist sent a handwritten note. But you know what helped me heal more than anything? The letter I received from a woman named Dorothy Winters, 3 states away. She'd seen the news coverage of the trial. Dear Mrs. Chen, it read, 5 years ago my neighbors tried the same thing to me. They almost succeeded. I ended up in a nursing home for 8 months before my grandson figured out what had happened. Thank you for fighting back. Thank you for proving that we're not invisible, we're not disposable, and we're not as easy to fool as people think. You saved yourself, but you also might have saved others. People will think twice now before trying this scheme again. That letter is framed on my wall now. I still live in my house on Maple Street. I'm still here at 73. And I plan to stay until I'm 93 if my health allows it. I upgraded my security system. I joined a support group for elder abuse victims. And I started a blog to help other seniors recognize the warning signs of predatory neighbors and family members. The Hendersons' house was eventually bought by a lovely young couple with a new baby. They have no idea about the previous owners, and I don't plan to tell them. Some stories are better left in the past. But I'll never forget what I learned. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone make you doubt your own reality. And most importantly, don't underestimate a 73-year-old woman who's been through hell and back. Because we're tougher than we look, sharper than people think. And we didn't survive this long by being easy to fool. The Hendersons thought I was senile. They thought I'd be an easy target. Too confused and isolated to fight back. They were wrong. And now they have 8 to 10 years in prison to think about their mistake. As for me, I'm thriving. My property value has actually increased. Turns out being the woman who caught the scheming neighbors made me something of a local celebrity. Sarah visits more often now, and we've rebuilt the trust that was damaged. I've even started dating again, Met a retired detective at one of my speaking engagements who appreciated my investigative instincts. Life has a funny way of working out. The people who tried to steal my future ended up losing their own. And me. I'm still here, still sharp, still standing. And I'm not going anywhere. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more true stories of justice and resilience. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We share stories every day of ordinary people who refuse to be victims. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, especially if you know seniors who might be vulnerable to this kind of predatory behavior. Your share could save someone from becoming the next victim. Drop a comment below and tell me. Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Let's build a community where we look out for each other. Remember, you're never too old to fight for what's right, and you're never too alone to find justice. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay strong.